So hi, my name is Stephen Jakes. I'm the co-founder of healingthemind.co.uk. And in this video today, I'm going to explain to you what I've discovered and how the inner workings of the human mind works, and why in many cases, people with mental and emotional problems can't actually solve them or get them resolved. And in this video, I'm going to explain to you exactly why that happens and how we can actually change that to heal our past issues, whether those issues create depression, anxiety, PTSD, trauma, or limiting beliefs. And this model I know to be 100% true because I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people over the last 3 years literally heal any issue that they come to me with. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about how I learned about this. So firstly, I just want to say to you, those that are watching, is that I've sort of been quite unfortunate in my life. Most of my life I've been through many traumatic experiences, going right the way back from my childhood up until about 4 years ago, when I reached a point where I wanted to end my life. Over the years, I've gone through pretty much everything. I mean, I say to most of my clients, other than being murdered and kidnapped, I've pretty much experienced everything a human individual could go through. And so I reached a point in my life where I just didn't want to carry on. I just wanted to end my life. I didn't want to end my life, but I didn't really see a way out. And along the way, I'd gone from abuse, losing my home, losing my car, losing businesses, relationships, having children, move from those relationships to go to another country. I've had millions of pounds of fraud made against me, and so the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And so over a period of time, those traumatic experiences took its toll. But unfortunately, we're told through life that we just need to sort of man up, or we need to just, not think about it and move on and just get over it. And so that's what I did. And what I come to realize is that model of belief actually doesn't work. And sooner or later, we reach a point in our life where all of those instances that accumulate suddenly reach a toll, and we then break. For me, I broke so bad. I sort of hit rock bottom, but also went through rock bottom. And I was in a place, like I said, I didn't really want to carry on as a human being in life. And which then led me to try and change the way that I feel. I needed to change my life because I didn't want to carry on. And so for several years, I invested large amounts of money. I tried almost every single therapy that's out there. And what I come to realize is that none of these therapies actually really worked or actually solved the problem. In many cases, it was I have to reframe the problem and try to, rethink it and look at it and forget about it and move on. But that didn't actually work for me. And I was fortunate enough to do an NLP course, where during that course, I was able to shift some of these emotions that I had, which sort of made me then question why, throughout this whole period of time, had I been to doctors, professionals, the leading neuroscientists, people with PhDs, psychologists, psychotherapists, all telling me to do these specific things in order to get better, even spiritual practices like crystals and meditation. I tried all of these things, but none of them actually really worked, because they're all just belief systems at the end of the day. So I actually wanted to question, well, why have I been told to do all of these practices or do all of these things, but actually none of them really worked and made me actually worse in the long run? And so I went on a journey for around about 2 to 2.5 years, where I'd lost everything in my life. I'd lost my family, my money, and I was pretty much at a breaking point. And I then decided to find out and learn, why had I been told that I can't change these feelings, these thoughts, these experiences from the past, and I had to live with them, manage and cope with them, when I'd already just done this out of a course, which was able to change something that was going on in my mind. And I was thinking, well, why am I being told one thing when actually changing the way you think and feel is actually possible? And so I sat down in my home. For roughly around about 2 years, and I went down the academic route. So I went and learned what all the academics are told in terms of psychology, how the brain works in the current model of therapy. And after about 13 months, I come to the conclusion that none of that really actually works. And that's why so many people are suffering today, and they don't really resolve their problems. And so having spent all that time knowing and learning all that stuff and coming to that conclusion, I was then able to then have to look at it from a different perspective. And so what I learned from that was all of the things that didn't work. So I knew that this didn't work and that didn't work and this didn't work and that didn't work. Although some of the logical elements involved in those therapies sort of made sense, but it still didn't address the problem. And so I then decided to look at the latest alternative research that was going into the human mind, and realized that actually all of that stuff didn't work. And I was able to formulate, taking all the different pieces from all the different therapies, plus all the academic stuff, all the different elements, and was able to put it together into a system that works 100% of the time. And fortunately enough, I've been able to resolve and heal all of my problems, or 95% of my problems from my past. And I've also been able to solve hundreds and hundreds of people that come to me for help. And I've been able to heal their depression, abuses, traumas, PTSD, anxiety issues. I've literally been able to heal and solve all of that based on this current model that I've been able to put together. And hopefully by explaining this model, you'll understand why, if you're currently struggling, you've not been able to solve it, why you've not been able to solve it. Okay, so first of all, first thing what I want to do is start off with basically that from the ages of 0 to 1 years old, okay, I want you to imagine when you're a baby, you're born, and between the ages of 0 and 1, we have a thing called, or the part of the brain called the reptilian complex. Now, this is the only part of the brain that's actually that's developed, which sits at the top of the spine, and it's responsible for all of our automated systems. When I say automated systems, that's breathing, sweating, digestion, and that's pretty much, you know, crying and all the rest of it. That's why a baby can really only do those things. And so between the ages of 0 and 1, that's the only thing that's running. And so that's why a baby can only do literally sweat, cry, and all the rest of it. Now, from the age of 1 to around about 7, just a loose age. What happens now is we have the second part of the brain that develops over the top of over this part of the brain, and this is what we call the mid-limbic system. Now, the mid-limbic system is what we call our emotional brain, and it's where we basically live out of our feelings. And so I want you to understand that this is our character. Okay, so when we're born, we're given a unique set of talents and skills and a way of being which is inherent to us when we're born. Unfortunately, as we grow older, that's no longer facilitated and brought out. What then happens is that school will get involved, parents will get involved, the television then influences the mind, and then starts to program all of those things that then formulate who we are. And so and this is what we call our authentic self. Okay, so this is our true self, our authentic self. So then between the ages of 1 and 7, a child is basically in a state of hypnosis. Okay, so what it basically does is it only lives in its feelings. Okay, and so what they basically do is, as they're growing up, they're literally modeling their learnings on their environment. So whatever's going on in that environment, how the parents speak, react, respond to certain events, situations, or other issues, the child observes that, and that is the model that then gets put on, or like an overlay that goes onto the child. And as the child then develops, when it's presented itself with those issues in its life, it will go, this is how I do that, because it will see how mum reacts to certain things. Like mum, like for example, might see a spider and react in a certain way, and the child then learns, when I see a spider, that's how I react, and then the child reacts in that way. The problem with that is now that then goes in and gets stored as a program, and then as we get older, every time we see a spider, we behave in that way. It's a program that gets installed. So this is our emotional brain. And so what I want to realize is, like I said, we're in a state of hypnosis, and we are literally absorbing and learning through our environment. And so what happens now is, as we get older through life, every time we do something or have an emotional response to something that happens in our environment, we store this information in the subconscious brain as memories, which are like neural pathways. And so for example, for example, let me say this: when you say to a child, you might say to a child, "What do you think you're doing?" When it's been naughty, say, "What do you think you're doing? Why are you doing that?" And the child will just look and all, "Oh, I can't think." And so then what happens is we tell the child off. The child then has an emotional response to that event, and then it gets stored in there. Basically, the child doesn't really understand, it can't think because it can't understand. It's just literally in this hypnotic state of feelings, and all it's doing is absorbing all this basically type of abuse, where parents think the child understands, but it actually doesn't. The child is actually thinking, "Why is my mummy shouting at me? Why doesn't my mummy love me?" Unfortunately. So this is where so much damage happens, because when we react to our environment in an emotional way, we store information. So let me roll back into how that actually really works, because what I need to explain to you is how all of these dots in here, which are when we have an emotional response to something, we store information in our subconscious brain, and that basically over time formulates our worldview, our beliefs, how we react and how we respond. And later on in life, that's what causes our problems. And it doesn't only happen between the ages of 1 and 7. This happens from 1 until your current day. But between the ages of 1 and 7, the information that gets put in there between the ages of 1 and 7 generally formulate who you'll be for the rest of your life. As that saying goes, give me the child by the age of 7 and I'll give you the man. So that's pretty much accurate. So let me explain how this information gets stored in the subconscious and why it causes us problems. So I want you to think about your life just being an event. Okay, so from the time you're born to the time you die, it's just one long event, just an event, or everything you do every day is just an event. Okay, but as soon as we have an emotional response to an event, okay, we then have an emotional response, which is an energetic response to the event, and that energy then creates a pathway or a memory in our brain. So we have an event, and then when we add an emotional response to that event, it formulates a memory. Now, not only does we have an emotional response, we also formulate beliefs and learnings. So for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say you find out that your partner has just been unfaithful with your best friend. You may think at that moment you'll have an emotional response of shock. You'll feel angry. That information will be a shock that gets stored in your brain. But you'll also formulate a belief that men can't be trusted, or women can't be trusted, and nobody loves me, and I'm a bad person, and a whole set of beliefs that you would associate with yourself or the external environment that gets intermingled with the emotional response, which gets stored as a memory, as a neural pathway. And in that neural pathway holds all that information of that event. Now, once that emotional response has happened, it gets stored in the subconscious brain. Okay, so if you can imagine now, between the ages of 1 and 7 years old, how many times a child will react or have a negative response or have an emotional response to certain events, from school teachers, from parents, from friends, from siblings, where they've been shouted at, told off, hurt. You can imagine between the ages of 0 and 7, there's a whole host of thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, which fundamentally, unfortunately, most parents and teachers create in the child, that causes all of their problems. And so by the time they get to the age of 7, they've already got all this information stored in who they are. So now I want you to realise that from the age of 7 onwards, we then get the next part of the brain that starts to develop, and it's what we call the cortex systems. It's the neocortex, and this is where we now become conscious. So as a child, we're unconscious. We're in a state of hypnosis. We're not conscious. We're not aware. We are just living by our feelings and experiences and learning, and there is no logic involved. Okay, we're just experiencing. But when we get to 7 onwards, the neocortex, which is the conscious part of the brain, is where we now start becoming aware of our environment. We are now able to discern and become aware of thoughts, feelings, people. And this is the aware part of our brain. And this is where now logic starts to come into play. So this is the logical part of the brain, and basically in the logical part of the brain is where now we start to deal with language and understanding. Okay, so this is where our personality is. It exists in this part of the brain, the conscious part of the brain, and it's your personality is learned. It's not who you are, it's learned. It's learned through past experiences, or you might see other people doing things from school, you might copy other people, and you think that's a benefit to me. I'm going to use that as part of who I am in order to help me get on in life or get the things that I want to achieve in life. But unfortunately, this personality element is the fake self. And this is what we call the ego. Okay, so the ego exists in this part of the brain. So we're now developing between the ages of 7 and 11, and the brain really isn't formed properly until about the age of 11. And now we go into the logical state. And this is where we deal with rational thinking, problem solving, and information, data. That's all this part of the brain really is for. Okay, so I hope you're with me with that. So the key thing here is that around about 20 years ago, when they started to do MRIs and started to learn about the human brain and the human mind, what they come to realize is that this logical part of the brain actually has no influence in any of your decision making and who you are. It's actually just your aware brain. And unfortunately, most blokes in particular tend to live out of this part of the brain, and it only equates to 5% of the brain. Okay, and this logical part of the brain is where we do problem solving, and we think we know, and we're working things out. But actually, this really just is for processing data and understanding things, but it has really no relevance to us as individuals and human beings in life as we move forward. And what they come to realize was that 95% of who you are and all of your decisions and all your behaviors that you make in life are coming from the subconscious brain, this part of the brain here, which is underneath the logical brain. And you're unaware of all of these things, and you're unaware of why you make the decisions you make. Now, a lot of people will go, well, that's not true. But I want you to think about this. I want you to think about how many times have you said to yourself, I knew I shouldn't have done that, but then went and done that. Because logically you knew you shouldn't have done it, but unfortunately what's in the subconscious brain was the one that drives your decision to do it, whether logically it worked or not. And so this is how we know, if you're watching this, how you'll know, yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I've done it. And that's because all of the information that's stored in the subconscious brain now drives your decisions and your behaviors. Okay? So I hope you understand that. So now I'm going to go on to how and why we have issues and how they're stored in the mind. So I want you to think about this. So I want you to go back, let's say 7 days. Can you remember 7 days going to the supermarket or going to work? So I just want you to have a little think. 7 days ago, can you remember going to work or going to the supermarket? The chances are the answer is no. Okay, but if I was to tell you that, what about if you went to work or went to the supermarket and you left your home and you got in your car and you drove to the top of your road, and just as you drove to the top of the road, a young mother with a small child ran out in between two cars. You're driving your car, the music's on, you got your coffee there, and all of a sudden at the last minute you see this child run out in front of you. And in that instant you've had to swerve the car. The car's gone up the curb, the coffee's gone all over you, you've heard a bang, the alarm's gone off, the airbag's gone off, and then you've jumped out of the car and you've looked down and you've seen that the child's okay, and you're like, oh, and then the mother's coming over screaming and shouting, look, you nearly hit my kid, and you're like, oh my God. And I then said to you then, do you remember driving to work or driving to the supermarket 7 days ago? The chances are you'd remember it. And even if I didn't see you for 10, 15 or 20 years and I bumped into you in an airport maybe one day and I said to you, oh, hello, Dave, hello, Sheila, I haven't seen you for ages. The last time I see you was when you went, oh, yeah, I know, I drove to work and I nearly hit that kid. Oh, yeah, don't go there, don't want to think about it. Right? That's why we say these things. Don't go there, don't want to think about it. Because in that instance of bringing up that memory, you experience the event, and in doing so, you experience the emotions that you experienced at the time of that event. Okay? But here's the thing. I want you to imagine that this conscious brain here is like Google, okay? But what we've actually done there is we've Googled a memory, okay? And that's what we've done. We've Googled a memory, okay? So as we know, there's an event, which is driving a car, where an emotional response which causes that memory. And in that memory is all the emotions and all the beliefs that get stored in here. So as we've Googled that memory, we've opened that memory up, and the memory and all of the information that's stored in the neural pathway, all of the emotions, which are just chemicals that are made in your brain, then come from the unaware, and it comes up into your awareness. So all of a sudden you've opened that up, you're now becoming aware, and you're like, oh yeah, no, don't talk it. Oh, it's terrible. I nearly hit that child. I nearly killed that child. I thought I nearly killed that child. And you'll experience those feelings. You go, oh, and that's why we say, don't want to talk about it. Don't go there, because we don't like those feelings. But the thing is that we know why we're feeling that, because we've actually consciously gone into that memory, brought them feelings up. Those feelings then come into the awareness, and now we're feeling those feelings, but we know why. We actually understand why, because, well, I know I'm feeling that because of that event. So that's okay. But here's where the problems now begin, okay? So I want you to think about or imagine you're sitting on your sofa, okay? It's Thursday night, and it's EastEnders night or Coronation Street night, and you're sitting there with the hubby or the wife, and you're watching EastEnders, and EastEnders is started, and you've got Phil and you've got Pat, and they're having an argument about what they're going to do over at the cafe. Is Phil going to go over there and have a go at Ian? And you're sitting there and you're glued to the TV, focused on this argument between Pat and Phil, okay? And what they're going to do if he gets hold of Ian, he's going to throttle him, okay? But anyway, whilst you're watching that video, that TV program video, what you see in the background was you see a parent or a young lady crossing the road with a small child that runs out in front of the child across the road. Now, while you're consciously focusing on the argument between Pat and Phil, your subconscious now all of a sudden opens up that memory of your event of when you was driving to work. And what that's done is now that's opened up that memory and all of the emotions associated to that memory from your unaware part of your brain, and that now becomes into your awareness. Now, all of a sudden, whilst you're sitting watching your TV, all these feelings come up into your awareness, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? I don't feel right. Dave, Sheila, I don't feel right. Something's not right. I don't feel right. Oh dear, I'm all shaky. I don't know what's going on. There must be something wrong with me. Oh dear, what's going on? I need to go and lay down, or I need to go and get a glass of water. Whatever your response will be. But what's happening is you don't know why all of a sudden you're feeling these feelings, and that's caused an event that gets stored in your brain. Okay, you've now had another emotional response that gets stored in the brain, and now that's running. And then tomorrow night you're sitting on your sofa, you're like still trying to work out what's going on and why you're feeling it. But you hear the music, you hear Phil, you're watching it again, and all of a sudden that triggers the response from the previous night maybe. Or the program's running where now you're in a loop trying to stuck feeling those feelings and trying to work out why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Those feelings come back up again, and then it starts to perpetuate over time. You've now anchored those feelings. You're trying to work out what it is, why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and you're like, oh, there's something wrong with me. I've gone mad. And you'll start making up all of this stuff. Now, this is where the problem, like I said, exists. Because what happens now is that when we have this emotional response, or when we have something that comes up from our subconscious from a previous event, those feelings come from the unaware and they come into our awareness. And this is where everybody trips up 100% of the time without fail. See, the problem is that when we become aware of those feelings, we go into our logical brain, and then we start trying to understand what that is. Why am I feeling that? What is that? And you'll now try to understand why you're feeling the way you're feeling. And you'll start using language. What is that? Is it this? Oh my God, there's something wrong with me. And what happens, unfortunately, is because we're trying to understand what that emotional response is, what we now do is we're going to make up shit. We're going to make up shit, and we do it 100% of the time. Now, this is key, and I need you to just let this land. This is important. All beliefs drive behaviours. So whatever your belief is, it will drive your behaviour. Now, The issue you have is now you're trying to understand what that is you're feeling, and you don't actually know because it's in the unaware. But consciously, you're logically trying to understand it, and you're going to make up shit. Okay? For example, oh, I know what it is. I know what it is. Oh, I don't feel right. I know what it is. And you've got to watch some YouTube videos or listen to some other stuff. And what you're going to do is you're going to go, I know what it is. I'm not doing enough exercise. Oh, there must be something wrong with me. I need to do some exercise. Okay? So now you've made up some stuff that you're not doing enough exercise is the problem. Okay? Now, the problem is with making up shit is you now believe that shit you make up. And now tomorrow night, you're going down a local gym and you're going, oh, hi, can I sign up for the gym, please? Yeah, I'm going to sign up for gym. It's the new me. Yeah, I'm going to sign up and it's going to be really, really great. And you feel really great because all of a sudden your logical brain thinks, yeah, I've solved that problem. Aren't I clever? Aren't I smart? And if I do that, yeah, that's what it is. That's what we're doing. And then you're going to start doing that. And because you believe it, you've had an emotional response to that belief. Again, we store that information in our subconscious. But what's now going to happen is after 2-3 weeks of going to the gym, the feel-good factor or the emotional response that you've had from thinking you've solved your problem now starts to dissipate. And all of a sudden, that feeling now comes back. And so you're now down the gym and you're doing all this exercise and you've been told to do this, but now that feeling's back. So now what you're going to do is you go, well, why is that feeling back? I'm going to try and understand it again. And what you're going to do is you're going to make up more shit. And that shit might be, oh, I know what it is. I'm not getting enough sleep. That's it. Yeah, no, that's it. I'm not getting enough sleep. So now you're down the gym. Hi, Sheila. Yeah, really great. I'm getting better. I'm doing really great. And now you're going home and you're having your dinner and you're in bed at 10:30 every night. And you're thinking, yeah, I'm smart. That's what it is. Yeah, I'm really clever. Now believe that. It feels really, really good. And you keep doing that. And then after about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, all of a sudden you're having your early nights and then that feeling comes back. And you're like, oh. So not only are you down the gym now doing all your exercise, telling everybody you're changing your life, but you're now having your early nights, but that feeling's still back and you're still like, it's not good. So now you're going to try and understand it again. Well, why? I'm doing the gym. I know. So we're going to make up some more shit. So now what it is, I know what it is. I'm not eating the right foods. I need to change my diet. That's it. Yeah, that's what it is. That's it. I've worked it out. Aren't I good? And you feel really great about that. We store another belief in there. Because remember, this drives your decisions and your behaviours. So now you're down Waitrose or Sainsbury's and you're getting your quinoa and your chicken and your fresh veg and you're doing that every night. And yeah, having that great. Aren't I smart? I've worked it all out. And there you go and bragging to everybody. You should do what I do, Sheila, Dave. You want to do what I do. I go down the gym 3 times a week. I'm drinking all the water. I'm having loads. I'm detoxing. I'm having early nights. I'm eating this diet. That's what you should do. Even though it's not solving your problem, you're actually telling somebody else how to not solve their problem. Crazy as we are. But we all have a bit of ego, and unfortunately, we all think we're doing good. But actually, we're causing more damage and more harm. So now, after a couple of weeks of eating all your rice and your chickpeas and your veggie diet and all eating healthy food, all of a sudden, that feeling's back again, you know? And now what's going to happen is, that feeling's back, and you're going to try and understand it again. You're going to try and be logical about it. Why am I feeling that? What's going on? I know what it is. I'm not drinking enough water. I need to drink. I need to juice. I need to juice and drink water. So now for the next 2 weeks, you're drinking all the water and you're buying all your juices and you're going, yeah, I've sorted it all out. I've worked it all out. Aren't I clever? Feels really good. You solved your problem. Here's the thing now. You're going to the gym 3 times a week now. You're drinking lots of water. You're having your early nights. You're eating loads of food, all the right food. Now you're juicing as well. And yeah, that's it. It's starting to get quite expensive. But anyway, you carry on doing this, and then all of a sudden, after a couple of weeks, that feeling's back again. And then you're trying to understand it again. And you're like, do you know what, Dave, Sheila, it's you. I was all right until I met you. I was absolutely fine. Now you come along and my life's hell. And then you blame Dave or you blame Sheila. And now all of a sudden, you said, that's it, we're finishing over. Dave and Sheila's now gone. Okay? So now, Dave's gone. You're down the gym. You're drinking your water, you're doing your quinoa, you're doing your rice, you're having your early nights, you're juicing, and you think, yeah, when that now that's going to be, my life's going to be better. And all of a sudden, after a few weeks, it's going to feel good, you think you got your life back, and then that feeling comes back again. And you're going to make up some more shit. Oh, I know what it is. I need to decorate. I need to rearrange the room. I need to go crystal. I need to meditate. And unfortunately, what you're going to do is you're going to keep going round and round and round in circles where you keep making up stuff, making up shit, believing the shit you make up and then behaving in that way. And unfortunately, what's going on is we now get caught in a loop of going round and round and round and round in circles until we've got the new car, we've got the new house, we've changed our boyfriend or our husband, we're on our diet, we're down the gym, we're drinking waters, we're doing crystals, we're meditating, we're doing all these things, and nothing's working. Okay, and so all of a sudden you're going round and round circles. You'll just reach a point where you'll go, oh, I can't do it anymore. There's something wrong with me. I can't function. I'm doing all these things that everyone's telling me to do, and I think I've worked it all out. And it'll reach a point now where you'll become broken, you'll become lost, and life becomes very, very, very hard. And you're now just doing all these things and feeling like you're a failure. And this is where at that point you might start going to look to get help. Now, unfortunately, most therapies out there deal with the response. So what they'll do is you'll go to a language therapy, okay, or you might go and do other therapies like CBT or other therapies, which I've done all of, which is the reason why I said it doesn't work. And the reason why most of these therapies that are out there, in my honest opinion, don't work, might work for some people, but for me, is because what you've got to understand is that your problem doesn't exist in this part of the brain. It deals in this part of the brain, okay? And what happens is that all these therapies are trying to get you to manage and cope and deal with it. So once you become aware of it, once it's in your awareness, we then have to go, right, I'm aware of it now, let's focus on that. Let's do anger management. Let's do, I don't know, it could be, drink. Let's manage the alcohol, manage the addiction. And that means that you've basically got that problem for the rest of your life. It doesn't actually solve it. They're just giving you tools to keep your problem. And for me, that didn't work. And like I said, it put me to the point where I was going to end my life. So the issue that we have now is actually what's really going on is all of that stuff that you've been doing is complete waste of time, because in reality, all you really needed to become aware of was the event that happened driving your car. And all we had to do was go into that and get rid of those responses and learnings and beliefs of that experience, because once we get rid of those, you're no longer experienced them. We change the actual, the event, we rewrite the event, we rewrite the responses. So I hope you understand that, because that's really, really key. And what I've discovered and what I've learned is actually how to do this. And all illnesses, mental health problems, emotional health problems, all exist and reside in this part of the brain. And so now what I want you to sort of get is everything is a cause and effect relationship. Okay? Cause and effect. And unfortunately, the whole model of everything out there is just managing the effect, the symptom, whether that through medication, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through certain types of healing, whether it's through massages and talking about your problems, or managing and giving you tools. Theoretically, none of those really work. They might help you in the moment, but they're never ever going to resolve the problem, because it's cause and effect. And I want you to realize that this part of the brain is where the cause is, and this part of the brain, when you become aware, is the effect. And managing the effect means you're going to keep your problem. So the next question I probably think you want to ask is, if that's cause and effect, how do we change the cause? Because once you get rid of your cause, there isn't an effect. Pretty simple. Okay, so there is a solution to it. Now let's go back down to how these memories are made. Basically, we have an event where we have an emotional response to it, whether you've heard that your partner's leaving, or whether you've nearly had an accident, or you've heard you're going to lose your house or your job, or you've been subject to abuse, violence. You might have actually had problems in your childhood, abusive parents, abusive stuff with teachers and schools. You've got to remember, every time we have this, we have emotional responses and beliefs that get stored in that memory, that neural pathway that gets stored in our subconscious brain. And in order to start removing and getting rid of those feelings and those responses that we have, we need to go into the cause. And there is a very, very simple explanation. So how that is created, we need to reverse the process. We're going to take the memory, and then we're going to remove the emotional response and the learning and beliefs and take it back to the event. So what happens now is that whatever's happened in your life, all of the stuff that you've had, the emotional responses, the feelings, the memories, the pain and the suffering now gets removed. They get recoded from negative to positive. and I want you to understand this more than anything, is our brain isn't as complicated as what we think. In actual fact, our mind is just a switchboard. When things happen to us in our life, we have negative things switched on sometimes and positive things switched off. And in other instances, we might have positive things switched on and negative things switched off. But we're going to focus on the negative things. And I want you to realize that when an event happens and we store information in a negative way, we're just holding a negative response, like a program that runs over and over and over again. This is running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And when something in our environment reminds us of a memory, we experience those feelings. So what we really want to do is switch those feelings, beliefs and thoughts off and replace them with positive ones. And that can be done by recoding the memory. Very, very, very simple. So the solution is to recode the memory, and by switching those things off or removing the pain and reprogramming them with different responses, ones that actually work for us and not ones that don't work for us. So when we watch in EastEnders and we see that event, or we see an ex-partner that makes us feel very anxious and depressed, when we get triggered into that unconscious response, those feelings that come up are no longer there. Like magic, they've just disappeared. Now, we've developed a therapy, we developed a technique that can virtually remove all of these things instantly. In some cases, I've had severe abuse cases, rape cases, sexual abuse cases, where I've been able to resolve the whole traumatic event in less than an hour. Now, might not be true for everybody, but that's what's actually possible. This can be used for absolutely anything in your past, and also this technique can be used for removing blocks in your future. You might want to start a business, but you have all of these things in your way, you have all these beliefs and doubts. They can also be removed, so you can then go on to live an amazingly productive and happy life. But for example, if you have depression, anxiety, PTSD and trauma, all that's happening is that in this instance, you're storing information that keeps that running. So I just want to touch on what depression is. Depression is very, very solvable. I've solved it in many, many, many people. What I want you to actually get is that it's just something in your territory that's happened. Now, when we say territory, I want you to think of your territory as being your home, your job, something that you own. It could be your children, your family. And if you're a very feminine person, or in particular, if you're a lady, you'll also have a social element. There'll be a club or something that you do, your yoga studio, for example, just as an example. But that's what we call our territory. Okay, something for men, they don't have the social element generally, so that's what our territory is. And what happens with depression is we experience 5 responses in our territory. So that'll be a loss of our territory. For example, you may have a loss of your job that would make you depressed, a loss of a child, a loss of a partner, a loss of your favourite shoes, or a loss of a tool, or the loss of something. And so we lose something in our territory that makes us feel depressed. Okay, and then once we get rid of that loss, we then come out of depression. It's also something that makes you angry in your territory, or you might have a fear in your territory. So, for example, that old adage of depression's living in the past and anxiety's living in the future, I'm going to have to say, unfortunately, if you believe that, totally incorrect, because depression can be experienced in the future. So if, for example, you have a job and Sheila comes in and says, have you heard, we all might be getting made redundant in 2 weeks' time or 2 months' time, that'll be a loss in your territory, a loss of your job in the set in the future. Now you'll go into a state of depression, because it might mean that you lose your home. It might mean that you can't do stuff for your children, you lose your income, you lose your job. That will now put you into a depressed state. That's in the future, that's not in the past. And so the other conflict we have is where someone crosses our boundaries. So, for example, if you've been touched inappropriately at work, or you have a team member or somebody that comes into a team and then tries to take over, someone's stepping into your boundaries, they're crossing your boundaries, that can also cause depression. And there'll also be an event where something you can't digest, where something happens and you go, oh my God, it's like a shock, and the energy gets stuck. They're the key things that cause depression. And so once we know that, all we've got to do is identify what that is, where the loss, anger, fear is in your territory. And then once we know what that is, we're able to use this technique to be able to switch off and remove those emotional responses. And as soon as that's done, the depression now lifts and you no longer have depression. Anxiety is only caused by two things. And again, all stuff that we have when we experience anxiety are all basically past events from our past. Okay, it's not living in the future. You may be fearful of the future, but generally 95% of the time, all anxiety is caused, or what we experience in the present moment is from a past event that gets triggered and we experience it now. And so what that will be is when we experience anxiety, it's because we had an experience in the past that left us feeling attacked or powerless. Okay, so that's feeling attacked or powerless. And feeling attacked has three elements to it. So the first element is where you actually receive or get physically attacked. Okay, the next level is where you get a perceived attack, where someone might look at you or threaten you or do something where it's not an actual physical attack, it's a perceived attack. And the third one is where you're attacking yourself in your head. For example, oh my God, everything's going to go wrong. I can't do this. I'm going to die. It's all going to go wrong. Everyone's going to leave me. So you're attacking yourself in your head about what the event is, and that will cause an anxious response that gets stored, and that now triggers anxiety. And obviously when feeling powerless, there'll be an event, a situation where you feel powerless, and feeling powerless will literally bring out an anxious response. So now we know that. All we need to do is, in order to remove anxiety from anybody's life, is find those events where you feel attacked and powerless, switch off those events and remove any triggers, and now you're out of anxiety. And to be quite honest, anxiety is a very, very, very simple problem to resolve, and I've resolved it in hundreds of people very, very quickly. If you're experiencing PTSD or trauma, basically it's the same thing. There'll be something that's happened to your environment that's created a severe shock that you perceived as a traumatic experience. And with PTSD, where we store information, we will store pictures and images and sounds in with those emotional responses. And so those emotional responses we have, which are generally guilt, shame, alone responses, or senses of loss, which cause depression, we also store images and sounds. And when we're working with PTSD, all we do is get you to, when we go back to the event, is we can delete the images, we can delete the sounds using exactly the same method as removing the emotional responses that are associated with other past events. So that's the solution. Like I said, using a DTO, what we're basically doing is we're literally getting you to go back to the memory, and all we're doing is replacing the negative response or belief that you have and replacing it with a new one. So now when you have that memory, you no longer have any of the negative, painful, fearful or thoughts or emotions that hurt. You're actually only really experiencing positive ones. And now all of a sudden, things that are causing you so much pain and trouble right now will just feel like they've never happened. They literally just disappear like magic. So that's my video. I hope you understand that. If you're interested in learning more and working with me and being able to resolve any of your past issues, please go to the bookings tab on my website, or if you're seeing this outside, then go to www.healingthemind.co.uk. I'm Stephen Jakes. Thank you for watching my video, and I wish you a good day. Bye.